Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries, to the show for living beneficiaries, the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. Prepare for the most educational 60 minutes on all of radio with your host, Rick Hidalgo. The House of Hidalgo show can be followed on Twitter and Facebook by searching House of Hidalgo. Find the show on the web at www.therockofsalem.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and while you're there, take the 5-question survey to let us know what you think. The Estate Radio Network is part of the Blog Talk Radio family of networks and can be found at www.blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. Join the show now by chat or call 619-639-4605. Don't forget to dial 1 to get in the queue. Here's your host, Rick Hidalgo! Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today? This is your host, Rick Hidalgo. Of course, this is the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. It's another beautiful day here in South Dakota. Even a better day in the United States of America because I tell you, I am meeting some of the most interesting people in our country. And the gentleman you're going to meet tonight is phenomenal. I had a chance to listen to him on Cancel the Cabal the other night, and we had a little discussion, a little chat afterwards, and you're going to be really thrilled with what you're about to hear. But first, before I bring him on, I'm going to let you know you can participate in our chat room, which is at the bottom of the page at blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. That's like double play. So if you go to that, website, you go down to the bottom of the page, you'll see the chat room. Participate in and ask your questions, or you can call in at 619-639-4605. That's 619-639-4605. Our guest tonight is John Darash. He is actually with the National Liberty Alliance.org. That's his website. We're going to find out a lot about them tonight. I think you're going to really, really enjoy this particular show. Without any further ado, let me bring on John. John, are you with me?
Yeah, how you doing? I'm here.
Wonderful. I appreciate you coming
and Gerard's
on.
with us also. Gerard's on the
okay.
line also, so he'll be piping in.
Hey, Gerard.
How you doing?
Hey, wonderful, wonderful. I also failed to mention this is an hour and a half show tonight, a little bit of a special type of show. We usually go an hour, but we extended it for this issue because this is pretty important. You guys, I've looked at your website, nationallibertyalliance.org, and I've, the little chat that we had the other day. I can't wait to get more information on this. We're going to pass it on to my group in South Dakota tonight and let them hear this. So I wonder, John, would you want to start a little bit by telling us a little bit about the background and what it is that you're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah. Well, we've been involved in trying to get people involved in the political and the judicial process here in New York for about 4 years. And so we've been traveling the state teaching people. There's a number of us involved. I may be the loudest mouth, maybe. But in any event, and we've got many people across the country, of course, that are working full-time efforts on this now. And but about, I guess I'm going to guess about 2 months ago, maybe Gerard will correct that if it's less time or more time, but about 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks ago, I'd say about 8, we discovered a Supreme Court case that was handed down the U.S. Supreme Court in a 6-3 ruling. Antonin Scalia wrote the paper on it, and he laid out the entire history of the common law grand jury. And we found it pretty fascinating because he had done an extreme amount of homework on this. He's probably been studying this for years with all the information that he poured into this particular case. And the case was the United States against Williams, 1992. We do have that up on our website. You can find that at nationallibertyalliance.org on the front page, right underneath a video that we have on the power of the grand jury, which is about 45 minutes long, and it really gives you a good overview of what it is we discovered and what we're doing and how we can win our republic back. But in any event, when we discovered what he had written up in this case, I mean, the night I discovered it, I couldn't sleep at all. I know Gerard was in the same situation. He was up all night looking, researching, studying this thing. And we made it our top priority because we discovered that we can win back the republic if the people just stand up. So it's up to the people. Washington is never going to change. It doesn't matter who you elect, who you put out there. They'll corrupt them as quick as they can. They'll intimidate them. And you're not going to get anywhere. Besides that, you need 430 people just for the Congress, another 100 for the Senate, so you need 530. Plus, of course, you need to deal with your own state. I know in our state we have 150 assemblymen, and we have I think 63 senators. And so we have a lot of people to try to get, elected. It's just not going to happen. The Republican and the Democratic parties are way too strong, and they indeed are the problem. Washington is the problem. In our case here in New York is the problem. And so the only way the people are going to save this country is if they have power. So they have to discover power. That's the key thing. If they don't have power, we've learned over the past 4 to 6 years that, we could do all the yelling we want. We can help people run for office all we want. We can write letters. We can march on Washington or your capital. We can go to town halls. And we might slow them down a tad, but that's about it. They're dead set on taking this country down, and I don't believe that there's much time left. So the people have to respond. But here at the 12th hour, we discovered the common law grand jury, and the power of it is phenomenal. What Scalia called it, he coined it the fourth branch of government that answers to nobody, absolutely nobody. There is a procedure set forth in our process.
Did I lose you, John? I may have lost you there. Oh, looks like I lost John. Let me see what I can do about getting him back. In the meantime,
Am I still here?
Yeah, there you are.
Oh, okay, yeah. Someone's trying to call me, and I keep dropping. I may just pull them in, and we'll tell them to be silent. That's all.
Okay.
But anyway, so our founding fathers did not leave us helpless. They really gave us some huge power, but it's been hidden from us. They control our schools. They control our entertainment. They control even our history. They've changed history. They've hidden things like this common law grand jury is very well hidden. And common law in itself has been hidden. I mean, that is our heritage, is common law. We were founded on common law. The Declaration of Independence was a common law document. The Constitution and the Bill of Rights is common law documents. So we have been founded on common law. And now when this has been uncovered, it's just a mind-blowing situation because the fact of the matter is that if the people stand up, and they do seem to be standing up now across the nation, we have over 30, as of this morning I found out, we have over 31 states that have joined our endeavor in doing this process in their counties. And here in New York, we have about, we know down in the southern tier of New York, we have about 17 counties running for election as we speak, and various other counties throughout the state. I'm going to guess that in 2 or 3 weeks we'll have 40 counties with common law grand juries in place here in New York alone. And before August is out, we believe we'll have all 62 in New York. Michigan has, I just got a note from Michigan that they've made some really big strides over there. They've got 14 grand juries covering the state. We know we have some grand juries out in California, at least 2 or 3. One is kind of defunct, because they didn't understand how the procedure works or the process worked, so they never did get the power, to my understanding. But there are others that have been successful. There's one down in Florida that's successful. We have two elected, right now as we stand, we actually have two elected here in New York State, Dutchess County and Orange County. We have an election going tomorrow night. I'm not sure whether it's tomorrow night or Wednesday night, down in Long Island. We have all of New York City moving towards the elections. So we have a huge, huge movement here in New York. We have a lot of leaders in New York, and again, we've been developing New York for quite some time. We also, Pennsylvania came on board not long ago, and they have really started to pick up the torch here, so to speak. They are growing in leaps and bounds. Florida also is growing very fastly. Even California is moving pretty quick. We have a lot of states. We've got Hawaii on board. We've got Alaska on board. I know the guy in Alaska has a pretty good network, so I know he's probably going to bring in a ton of people, not only across his own state of Alaska, but also throughout the whole United States. And so there's other various groups that we've been talking to, but this is so huge because the duty of the grand jury is to repair and fix all wrongdoing, and to return the process of our courts of justice back to exactly that, courts of justice, because presently we have courts of injustice or injustice. And the power of the grand jury, they have the ability to put the message out clearly to the elected judge within their counties that, hey, you know, the United States Constitution says you have to be common law, and that's the only law of the land is common law. And even in our case, New York State says the same thing. It's called a court of record. They must be a court of record, and that is common law court, right, which is synonymous with natural law. And so with that in mind, we can force the judge to obey the law under the threat of indictment if he doesn't listen. Same thing with the prosecutor. If he doesn't listen, we can, under threat, force him to obey the law and no longer use these puppet juries, these trial juries and grand juries. They're going to have to come to us. So the people will finally take control. The beautiful thing about this is it doesn't just take control. Once you take control of the county, and every county does the same, you've just taken control of the entire Supreme Court of New York. So that's the key thing, is taking control of the justice system. Now, the beauty of this whole thing is it doesn't end there. We get the opportunity to correct any wrongdoing anywhere in the states. So if we discover some kind of wrongdoing in some government office, even just treating people with disrespect, not giving them the things that they ask for, requiring a FOIL to be filled out, requiring people to wait 5 days, and all that other nonsense, we can call them down on the carpet, make it clear to them this is what they've got to do, write a prescription. They got 24 or 48 hours or whatever it is we give them to fix it. Otherwise, we'll pull them back in and we'll go through the indictment process. So you get to control everyone, including these clowns heading out to Washington, for instance, that are taking all these bribe monies. They call it special interest funds or monies or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Okay, I call it a bribe, exactly what it is, because they're giving them money to do something and not do the will of the people, but the will of these corporations, these special interests. So we're going to let these guys know with no uncertain terms that that's bribery here in New York State, and that's punishable by the law. And so therefore, if they take that money in Washington and they think they're going to come back to New York and continue to live here and rule as or work as our servant government, we're going to have the sheriff waiting for them at the border, and we're going to deal with that. And so it's an opportunity, really, again, to bring us back to 1789. This is huge, and once people go out and see this video that we put together, it's a PowerPoint video, they'll see how powerful this is and how huge this is and how they can take back their state and therefore their country. That's why we're moving so quickly. I mean, I can't begin to tell you. I am just so overwhelmed. We never anticipated to do this. We were kind of drafted into the process, and leaders have jumped up in every state that become involved with us and taken control of their state and leading their state back into the republic again by teaching people and leading people into the common law process of the grand juries. So that's going on right now, like I said, in 31 states, and we anticipate that to grow exponentially, and it has been, as a matter of fact. The growth on a daily basis is just huge from my perspective. And again, we just anticipated to do New York. We thought by mid-August we'd have New York and we'd become an example to the rest of the country. But there are actually states that are actually going to beat us out, as a matter of fact, and get common law grand juries throughout their state before we will. And we're anticipating to do that in the next 4 weeks. So that's pretty huge, and that's a big movement.
Yes, it is.
So we have a lot of dedicated people. Gerard, you want to pick up from here? You got anything particular you might want to bring in? Did we lose Gerard? I think we did. Let me pull him back in. Okay.
You know why you got him back?
Well, he's trying to get him back, but in any event, go right ahead.
Well, I was going to say, while you're doing that, as you mentioned earlier, one of the things that we've been struggling with here is that the concept of the people's common law jury, a grand jury, has been buried and lost. It's been kind of back page news for all these years. I wonder, could you at some point kind of separate in the minds of some of the people who may not be aware of it, what the differences are between a common law grand jury and and just a trial jury? Because I think a lot of people might be mixing up the two.
Right. Well, we'll call one a citizen's grand jury and the other one a people's grand jury. And we'll call it citizen because, the 14th Amendment turns us from people to citizens and makes us subject to the laws of the United States. Whereas before the 14th Amendment, we were citizens, but they kind of robbed that word. And so we go back to the original word we found in the preamble of the Constitution, we the people. So the people's grand jury. And so the main difference is this. We come at it from the standpoint of this. We the people that established and ordained the Constitution for the United States of America. Therefore, we're above the Constitution. All our servant government is below the Constitution. And the servant government cannot make any statutes, which they call law, that try to control our behavior. They do that all day long, and they get away with it because we believe that fiction is true when it's a lie. And if we understood this, and if all the people understood this, then we can have people nullification overnight, and they wouldn't have any power over us. But we'll get it back through the power of the grand jury, and people will start to realize in short time that this is the case and that the government cannot control their behavior. But in any event, you have a citizens' grand jury, which is controlled by the government, the laws of the state or the laws of the United States, as far as the federal government is concerned. And what has happened is that when you listen to a prosecutor talk, he talks about he's going to indict, or he's going to make a deal, or he's going to do this, or he's going to do that. Well, he has no power to do anything in common law. The only thing he has is he can come begging on his hands and knees to see if we might indict, and the people get to decide whether we're going to indict or not when we have a true grand jury. And that's the major difference between the grand juries. When he brings the grand jury together, he literally leads the grand jury and orchestrates the grand jury, commands the grand jury, and they kind of just follow his lead. They do a lot of research on the people that are coming in. They do a psych makeup on them to see where they're coming from and if they're controllable and so on. And those are the people they want. And when they get a good grand jury that is obedient to them, then they try to keep them as long as possible without trying to revolve them too much. But that's what we have. We have grand juries who indict anything. Like these guys say, I can indict a ham sandwich. Well, under a common law grand jury, he can't indict a bologna sandwich. Forget about it. He's not going to indict anything.
There's a line in Williams' case that kind of sums up the relationship between the grand jury and the court, because the prosecutor is an officer of the court, obviously. And it says the court cases relying upon the power deal strictly with the court's control over their own procedure, where the grand jury is an institution separate from the courts, over whose functioning the courts do not preside. And that's not what's going on today. They're dictating to the grand jury. 200 years ago, they would have took the prosecutor and maybe even the judge out and hung them for doing that. That's jury tampering.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, so go ahead, John.
And then the judge does the same thing. You see, the prosecutor controls the grand jury, and then once they get into the courtroom, the judge controls the trial jury. The judge tells them that, hey, you get to decide the facts, but I get to decide the law, and you got to be obedient to what I tell you the law is. And of course, that law is worded and created, and the case is fought on a certain premises that they're going to get a guilty plea, because if they have to plead according to the will of the judge, these people are going to be found guilty all day long. As a matter of fact, New York State Constitution, Article 1, I believe it's line 9, it says that the jury decides both facts and law. So even our New York State Constitution is clear on that.
Right.
So once we bring a grand jury that understands what a crime is, and there are certain principles of law, and there's not too many of them, but there's certain foundational principles that we as jurors have to realize. And one of them is if there is no injured party, there is no crime. The state cannot be the injured party. Okay, there has to be an injured party for there to be a crime. So that's a key thing. So when we as grand jurors go to look at a case and we consider whether we're going to indict when these prosecutors bring these cases, let's say they pick someone up that's carrying a weapon, and they were just carrying a weapon. They're regular, decent people carrying a weapon. They don't have a license. They don't have a permit. They're traveling through, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not a crime. We're not going to indict on that. That's ridiculous. Someone coming in, driving without a driver's license, that's not a crime. That's insane. That's total insanity. So there's a lot of things people have to realize. No injured party, no crime, and that's the key. So we as the grand jurist also, let's take the case, how a case would go with the existing trial jury, for instance. The judge, after the judge would cue in the jury on how they have to rule, and then he'll give the final instructions at the end. That's called jury tampering if it's from our perspective. He can't talk to the jury. The judge, as a matter of fact, should be called a justice, not a judge, because no man can judge. How do you get a servant to judge over the owner of the country, over the ruler? That can't happen. So judges are not permitted to rule in any common law court. They don't have that authority. They cannot. They're just administrators of the court. It is the jury or the sovereign of the court that is called the tribunal, and they make the decision at the final end of the game. But in any event, at the end of the case, right before they go to deliberate, the judge again will tell them, hey, this is, they'll instruct them again, and the whole thing is focused so that they get a guilty thing. See, whenever they put anyone in jail, or if they find them, the state gets all the money. And you put someone in jail, the state gets money. That court gets money. It's a money game. It's all about money. And that's why we have so many people in jail. But the bottom line is that in a court of justice, let's just finish off that scenario. You have the injured party. They're brought into the court. They testify on behalf against the defendant. And then when they finish, they throw them outside the doors and they're done with them. Because whatever money the state collects, it goes into their pockets. And the injured party never gets restitution. They're stuck, and they may have to try to get a civil case going and try to battle it out that way if they're lucky and if they have the money to do that. But there's nothing they could do, especially if the individual's in jail. So how do you get money of someone that's in jail if it's a money damage that you're going to be looking for? But what the grand jury does, first of all, these are justice. We're looking for justice. And so the grand jury will first try to arbitrate any case, even if it's an assault charge. They will try to arbitrate that case, and they will see what it is that would take to bring restitution to the individual that was injured, and then they would offer that to the defendant. And if they're guilty, they're most likely going to take it, and then that would be overseen by the process, and that person would then get restitution. And of course, if you can't make some kind of agreement between the two, you send it into the trial, and then the trial jury will hear the whole story out, and they'll make a decision. And the trial jury gets to decide, again, both law and facts, and then they get to decide what the sentence will be. And they get to decide what the restitution is. They get to decide everything, okay? And whatever they say cannot be second-guessed, because that's a court of record, and it can't even be second-guessed by the appeals court, the appellate court, also, unless it's a violation of someone's rights, and then of course they can hear that. Other than that, they can't second guess the decision of a court of record, which is a common law court or a court with a jury in it. So now you have at least restitution. The last thing we want to do, unless these people are violent people, we got to consider jail, of course, then, especially for murder or something like that. But most of these cases are not violent. Maybe there's a robbery or something. Why put the people in jail when, if they have to be secured for a while, well, they can put a ring on their ankle and put them under home arrest. We have that technology, and they can allow them to go to work, and they can know whether they're working or not by locating the ring, and this way they can pay restitution to the injured party. And the length of their penalty or payment back is however long it takes to pay restitution, because you see, a court of justice requires restitution. That's another principle of common law. For every injury, there must be a remedy. So you see, these are two major principles that we have to run off of, and we have to consider every time we look at a case. Also, sometimes, if a case is a little shaky and you're not really sure, and nobody, it really doesn't look like the person is guilty, but they could be, we may decide, why run that case through? Because we're only going to make these people spend a whole bunch of money and destroy their lives. You need something solid to send into the courts, at least some evidence to send in. But also you have the opportunity of giving mercy depending on the type of crime. I mean, goodness, let's say there are situations that are called for extenuating circumstances. And so an individual might be guilty of sin, and everybody in the room might agree, this guy is guilty of sin. But you know what? If I was in that person's situation, I probably would have done the same thing. And if they come to those kind of agreements, then they can have mercy. You see, this is the human factor that plays here, too. So it is the people, our fellow, people in our state, in our country. It is the people who get the decision. The state cannot hold anyone without first going and talking to the people. And that's a key point. And now some people have been arrested. We know of a lot of people across the United States have been arrested, still haven't, and going weeks and months and not getting before a judge or anything. Well, the grand jury can call that to the carpet immediately, and they can pull that person before them. We want to know what this person is being held for, because you guys running the state, you're servants, and you don't have the authority to hold these people. You show it to us, and we'll decide, and we'll let you know whether you can hold them or not. So this will solve a lot of problems and all these crazy acts and different things. It'll solve the problems here in New York with the SAFE Act, because it becomes null and void, irrelevant. We're not going to prosecute. And there's a lot of things we can change as a grand jury, and we have quite a few ideas, and a lot of people have ideas, and we'll see what works and what doesn't, and we'll try to do better. And again, we want to be very careful. If we're going to punish someone, we want to make sure that they're guilty of this crime.
Oh, excellent. I appreciate that explanation. And as you know, I'm part of a group. We've been looking at putting together some different structures, common law juries, and that kind of thing. And one of the things that we keep running into all the time is this question of execution or enforcement. What's your take on that?
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand what enforcement is, and they do have a problem because there's a lot of common law cases out there, and when they are won, they refuse to enforce it because maybe there's different various ways to run, through the court system. And so enforcement is a problem, and especially when you come in under a common law case and you do what's called a court of record, whereas the plaintiff is the sovereign of the court. And as long as he's standing on righteous grounds, he gets the rule. He used to put on a good show, and at the end, he or she or the group of people, they're the tribunal. They get to make the decision on the case. Certainly, the judge can't do that. And if the other side is too brain dead to go for a jury, well, oh well, So, but that's the way common law works, and people need to know that they have the opportunity. Anything over $20 is you can get yourself a jury. And of course that $20 is probably more like $1,500 in today's money. But in any event, it's still, they hold it as the $20, so you can get a jury. But as far as enforcement, it's a process. Okay, there's no one could step in the way of the process. When you decide as a grand jury to indict, first of all, we have a process to go through the people of the county deciding they want a grand jury, and we call it an election. Now, it's not election of the people, it's election of the process, the grand jury process back in your county. And so far, the elections we've held, which has only been a couple so far, but there's going to be quite a few over the next 2 or 3 weeks, they've all been unanimous. Everyone that comes out and they hear what the grand jury is about, we do a 30-minute presentation, and at the end of it, everybody's sold on it, and it's unanimous. Yeah, let's go for it. That's what we want in this county back. We want law back. And so once you have a grand jury that comes in the proper way and the papers are filed, they cannot deny you. It's filed with the county clerk for the record for the public, and it's filed with the court clerk for the record for the fact that there's a process now. Grand jury is going to be knocking on your door in the next few days, and we're going to want access and the keys to the jury room, and they will give it to us. And especially once you get past that part of the door, okay, now you're in. There's really nobody going to get on your way. If they're going to get in your way, they're going to try to stop you at the door. And that's why we're doing it in blocks of 10, 20, 30 state counties at a time, because many of the counties will get through, and they will be able to indict from those counties into a county that's rejecting a grand jury. They can remove that judge from office, indict them, and then the next judge, I'm sure he's not going to want to be indicted, so he's going to let it go through. But that's the process just to get in the door. Once you're in the door, though, you now write what's called a presentment. Let's say we go out. We know where there's a lot of crimes going on, and we're not out on a witch hunt. We're not out to, goodness, if we go out and arrest all the criminals that we know about, Albany would be a ghost town, and if we had the opportunity to go in Washington, that would be a ghost town too, okay? So we can't put everyone in jail. The real evil guys, they'll be gotten anyway, because someone will come knocking on the jury door and say, hey, this judge over here, let me tell you what he did to me and my family. Let me tell you what he did to my children, how he destroyed our lives and we lost our home, and it is going to go on. Well, now you have an injured party, and you got to indict. Unless you can work a deal out between that individual and the judge to pay restitution, they're going to go to the indictment. So I have a feeling when this thing really gets moving, there's going to be a lot of people retiring or maybe even moving out of the country. But in any event, you get into the system, and let's take, we know of places. I won't mention anything particular. We go to a particular government office where they know where they're breaking the law, and we do our little investigation there, and we bring forth some of the things that we know that they're doing, and then we just lay out the law. We literally write a prescription. Look, this is what you guys are doing. This is wrong. You got to fix it. This is what you got to do. And then you figure how long you're going to give them to do it, 24 hours, 48 hours, a week, depending on what it is, okay? You got to fix it, okay? And if we hear about it again, then we're going to call you down onto the carpet, and we're going to look at indictment. So they're going to fix the problem. So now you just fixed something. Now, let's say you have to indict someone, or you have to do what's called a presentment. A presentment is an indictment by the grand jury on their own accord. They mobilized themselves. They found something. They discussed it, and then they decided to indict. So they do what's called a presentment, and they present that to the county, to the court clerk. Where the other way would be an indictment. They put the indictment, which is also sort of a presentment anyway, and it goes to the court clerk. Well, once the court clerk gets it, there's a process. It's like an assembly line. It's the law, it's the rules, it's the way things work. When the papers hit that clerk's got to run with it, and it goes down to the next step, to the next step, to the next step. They call for the proper prosecutor, unless we set forth the rules to bring in a private attorney generals, which we have about a dozen of them across the country, and we bring them into the system because we don't trust the prosecutor is going to prosecute correctly, maybe. So we will get to that point, but the bottom line is as it moves into the court clerk, they then has to move one step to the next. Preparation for the case has to be made. Dates need to be prepared. A jury needs to be called out, and everybody needs to be preparing the case. And time, the lawyers will start coming together, and they work out, the arrangements of time and how long they need to do this, and so on and so forth. And they plan out the case, and that's the process. Nobody can stop the process. It never has been stopped before. It never will be stopped before, and it cannot be stopped before. It is 20 years in jail if a judge decides to stick his fingers into that case and pull that paper out of the file. Anybody who removes a paper from the file of the clerk is 20 years in jail. And we've had this done before, and we send them back with what's called a demand to file, and in that demand to file, we list out the laws. Well, we're going to do our indictments and everything in the beginning, listing out the laws, so that clerk knows, well, I better not listen to the judge and pull it out, because for me, it's 1 to 3 years if I reject it, and it's 20 years if I participate with the judge in pulling it out. So she is not going to participate, because we're going to write it right down in the paper, what the penalty is for doing these things. Now, like I said, we've had judges on 2 cases, maybe 3, that literally have sent up, no, matter of fact, it was 3. They sent our papers back through the mail. We returned them back, certified mail, with a demand to file, and we've never got them back since. Every time we do it, they file it, because we put the fear of the law into their hearts. So anyway, if a judge pulls it and puts it in the mail, that's 40 years in prison he's facing. 20 years for taking it out of the file, 20 years for using the post office, which is fraud, to mail it through the system. That's 40 years potentially in jail. We have a judge which waiting right now, and we've served papers on to him. We overruled him. He sent our papers back. We sent it back, and we let him know the law. He's facing 40 years in jail as we speak. Now, we have no intentions of putting him in jail for 40 years, but we're going to make our point. Okay, and maybe we'll put him in jail for a day or a week or something. He's going to pay restitution is what he's going to end up doing. I know anybody who injures my rights or injures me, I don't want him in jail, because they can't pay me back. They can't try to find some way to find restitution for me. So I'd rather them being out working on the back of a garbage truck or something than getting a paycheck so they can pay me, So this is the process, and nobody can stop it. And it's a very dangerous thing for someone to think that they can just step in there and try to do something about it. They can't. Can't happen. Now, there is a case in California that took place, and the grand jury didn't understand the process. And I got a call from someone who was on that grand jury. They were interested, and they're coming into what we're doing now also, but they're leaving that grand jury because they don't know what they're doing. And they didn't do enough homework. What they did is they did a presentment, which I think they called an indictment. They didn't understand it's called a presentment when it's coming from them. And then they gave it to the prosecutor. Well, the prosecutor rolled it up and threw it in the garbage. He's not going to tell them what to do with the paper if they don't know. And so now they're saying that the prosecutor refuses to prosecute, and they don't have any power. And they can't get anything done. Well, because they don't know the process. If they were to put it into the file directly under a form of what's called a presentment, the prosecutor can't even go over there to touch anything, and the judge might have access only because he knows the clerk, and the clerk's going to read the paper and say, I'm not getting involved in this if you do it properly, and it'll go through and it'll happen. Now, some will say, well, maybe they'll make it fall into a black hole. Well, that's okay. Let them make it fall into the black hole. Clerk's responsible. We're going to go to the clerk to find out who we need to prosecute because someone made it fall into the black hole. And if they didn't do it, they need to go do some research and figure out who did. You see, I'm sure it'll find its way right out of that black hole quite quick and right back out onto the assembly line. See?
Well, John,
so you just have to know the process.
John, I just have a couple questions, and really, I'm going to pose this to you in a certain kind of scenario here, because I know I've gone to my county clerk here, and I've tried to file a certain paper that's well known, but here's what happened in my case. She, the county clerk here, this is the Register of Deeds here in this particular town. I went in to file a piece of paper, and she actually asked the attorney, our local state's attorney, whether she could file it or not. Okay, so we have in many cases refusal to file by these clerks, mm-hmm. and then on a secondary note, how do you re-educate the local sheriff who's been convinced that by their statutory bogus laws that he has to follow the instructions of a judge.
Right. Okay. Well, there's two questions here. Let me deal with the sheriff first, and then you can kind of remind me of the next one. But let's take the sheriff. We don't command the sheriff to do anything. Grand jury doesn't. That's not their job to command the sheriff for anything. The sheriff has a duty to do, and he has to follow certain processes. The purpose of statutes, okay, is the same thing as policies and procedures. That's their purpose. They're written for the bureaucrat. It's written for the elected official. It's written for municipalities and government agencies, and this is how you go about. And it's called law for them because there are penalties if they don't follow certain rules and laws because people get damaged from it. So sometimes a penalty is placed, usually under U.S. codes, a lot of U.S. code penalties. But in any event, when you want to, let's say we want to do an investigation, it's a matter of just making the phone call, letting the people know we're coming down, and then we just show up at their door and we just start asking the questions and do what we have to do. No one will question that. That's the authority of the grand jury. And if we call them in for questioning, okay, then we put out what's called a grand jury summons. Okay, now grand jury summons has no teeth behind it. Either people are going to obey it or they're not, and we have no power to do anything about it. But what we can do is we take a summons that has been ignored. We take that and we write up a summons and for the court to sign, okay, for the judge to sign, and we attach the one that was disobeyed, that didn't come in, and we give it to the clerk. Now the clerk has a process. Whatever judge is on duty at the time that the clerk finally gets to that piece of paper, that judge signs. They don't have a choice to sign it. They sign it because that's the process, that's the job. In other words, we're telling the court they need to put forth a court order. So now the court summons the person in to talk to us. Now, let's say they still don't show up. So then we fill out a form again. We attach both papers. Both were just ignored. So we pass it back to the clerk. The clerk then takes a look at it, gets the judge's signature, and then it's handed off to the sheriff. And the sheriff goes and picks up the individual. Then the individual is taken to jail. They're held there until the next time that the grand jury is meeting. Could be days, it could be a week from now, whenever it is. When the grand jury finally meets, we'll notify the jail. They'll bring that individual before us. We'll do our questioning, and then we'll let them go. It's that simple. You see, it's all a process. When people understand the process, anything could be done. And anybody that gets in the way, there's a penalty. There's policies and procedures. It's written down, and people are going to go to jail for 20 years for removing papers out of a file.
Well, that's a good answer. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is the second half of that answer is what you said about the clerk asking the attorney. What she doesn't understand, it doesn't matter that she asked the attorney because the attorney is not liable here. The attorney won't go to jail. When you give her a file on demand, that's on her shoulders. It doesn't matter what the attorney said. The fact that she didn't file it, she's liable for that. So when her feet get held to the fire, she's the one that's going to go to jail for 3 years for not filing, not the attorneys. So when you send
now the clerk could be a he now, Gerard.
Or he, I'm sorry.
All right, just so we know that.
I'm projecting my own experience. I'm sorry. But you're right, because now we have a male clerk here. But anyway, the fact is when you give her that file on demand, the penalty is right in there. Now, if she reads it, she's going to get scared. And if she doesn't get scared, she's foolish because the attorney's not going to defend her when it comes time for her to answer for her crime, so to speak. You know, they feel brave because an attorney told them. Well, I'll tell you what, in my experience, do the opposite whatever the attorneys tell you, because usually it's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so, but, you know, and when they understand that basically the attorney doesn't tell her that this is her responsibility and she's kind of hanging out there by herself to dry. But, I mean, believe me, the minute that paper goes in and she says, oh, my God, why'd you tell me to do this, she probably won't even be able to find that guy. He'll be hiding. He'll be leaving the building.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And I'm with you. I get that. I appreciate those answers. Let me just take this one more step, one more level up. Let's go back to the sheriff for a moment. A lot of the codes, a lot of those statutory laws are actually repugnant to the Constitution. Okay.
Right.
So my question is, here's a sheriff who's obeying these orders that are actually not even lawful orders,
right?
To fulfill the whatever orders are given to him by a judge. My question is, how do we re-educate the sheriff to where?
Well, it's very simple. That's very simple. Look, first of all, the sheriff better get a brain real quick, otherwise he should leave his job. Okay. We've talked with sheriffs where they say, well, look, I don't know the law. I got to go talk to the attorney. Well, if you got to go talk to an attorney, maybe you shouldn't be a sheriff, because if you don't know what the Constitution is, how can you uphold it? Okay, it's that simple. Anything that is repugnant to the Constitution is null and void. That's a case, Marbury versus Madison, 1803. And that has stood the test of time. It's still used today. It's the most quoted case and never been overturned. Okay, now, once these people... Look, when we come into office, we're going to be very kind to people. We're coming in with mercy. We're coming in with a sense of justice. We're coming in with a sense of honor, and we're coming in with a sense of mercy. It can't work any other way. We're coming with a bent knee to the God of the universe, and that's the bottom line. So we're not coming in as a witch hunt. We're not coming in as people pushing our power around. We have to get rid of the idea, if we have an ego problem, we better bury it, because you're only going to hurt what we're trying to do if you can't control your ego. But the bottom line is all we want them to do is obey the law. And if it takes them a while to figure it out, we'll tolerate with them, and we'll have mercy with them, and we'll go along as long as it's honest and we feel that is the case. Now, we wrote a book, and it is a handbook for jurors, judges, bailiffs, and sheriffs. It's for all four. And basically it lays out the law very, very clearly. That particular handbook is available for anybody who comes up and signs up online as a jurist. They get taken to a page, which is a private page. They need to bookmark that page so they can come back. And on that is an 8-hour course or orientation, whatever you want to call it, a workshop, to prepare anybody to become a jurist. Now that's going to be shortly, because we also have in there how to go through and create the grand jury, go through the election process, and then what the plan is, the overall plan. But in any event, we have. I lost my train of thought. Where was I going with this? Where was I?
well, the 8-hour course eventually will be shortened, because once the grand juries are established, people don't.
Maybe 3 or 4 hours.
Right.
Oh, I remember the sheriff. Going back to the sheriff. Okay.
Yeah.
So we wrote this paper. Okay. Now this paper is very clear, and there's not a lot to it. I mean, there's 40 pages, but it's a small book. It's no different than a pocket constitution with the Bill of Rights in it and the Declaration of Independence. It's about the same size. And so it's 40 pages. It has some very powerful, informative, important information for all those parties to know. Comes out of the American Jurisprudence book, which is a book for judges that they're supposed to be obedient to. They don't have a choice. Okay, so we have some things from there concerning the Constitution. We also have a lot of court cases, court rulings. And we lay it out very clearly, very precisely, and very matter-of-factly. We explain what common law is. We explain the basics of what a crime is. And so we will take in the sheriff. The first order of business when we become grand jurists is to deal with the judge. So that's the first guy we're going to call. We may be on the 3rd floor, he's down on the 2nd floor, or vice versa. And we may say, hey, how you doing, Mr. Judge? We'd like to get to know you, and, we're the new kids on the block. And they know we're there. He's been boning up, I'm sure, in common law. He's going to deal with us now. Okay? And we just let him know. We play on his ego, because they're all full of ego anyway, that and BS. So we let him know, hey, look, we want to just glean from all your common law wisdom. Come on down, let's talk. And we're not attacking him. We're not going to threaten him. We just want to know what he thinks about common law. And I'll bet you dollars to donuts in most cases they're going to be able to tell us a lot about common law by that time. And we're going to reward him for that and say, that's great, and here's a copy of our book. We appreciate that, and we'll be watching your cases. Thanks for coming in. And of course now we have spies in the court, because whenever they have a court case, they have jurors, and jurors come to the same pool that we come from. So it's all one big pool. and they learn what common law is and what's the difference between common law and statutes, and they get the right mindset, to develop we have to, when we're in that room, we better develop that sense of honor, that sense of justice, and that sense of mercy, because again, that's what's gonna bring us through, and we'll be able to sleep with our decisions. Okay, and but in any event, we called the judge in first. The next person we want to call in is probably the sheriff, or probably the second guy, and we want to befriend him. Hey, how you doing? We're the common law grand jury here in the county. People decided to have this returned by election, so on and so forth. Why don't you come on down? How's Tuesday? We work at a date. They come down. Now here, the sheriff now comes down into the county seat, goes to the courthouse. He knows exactly where the courthouse is, and he walks into the courthouse. And as he walks through the halls, he comes to the grand jury room. It's right on the door, and he opens the door. And who's he talking to? He knows exactly who he's talking to. He's talking to the grand jury. He's going to come there very humble. He's going to come there knowing we have authority. He's going to come there knowing we have the power. And he may be a little shaken because he's not sure why he's there. We're going to tell him we just want to talk with him. And we'll make him feel very comfortable. We're going to just let him know that, look, the Constitution requires common law, both, in our case, the New York and the U.S., and we'll show him where it says that. And, they've been operating with a lot of these different statutes, which they call law, which is repugnant to the Constitution. We'll direct them to those places in the booklet. And we'll give them a copy of the booklet. How many deputies you got? Oh, 20. Here's 20 books plus for yourself. And here's a couple extra, And look whenever you have a question, you don't have to go see a lawyer, because the lawyer is going to look at statutes, and you're going to get the wrong stuff. And if you talk to him, you may end up in jail because we may indict you. Okay, so you better make sure you can go talk to him first, and you can come talk to us. That's fine. And once you get the skinny on what's going on, then you make your choice. How you're going to obey the Constitution, or you're going to obey those statutes. So if there's anything in that book you don't understand, here's my phone number. You can give me a call. You can come down here anytime. You can knock on our door. Just walk right in. We'll talk to you anytime. We'll even come down to the sheriff's office if you want. If we're in the area, we'll just stop in and we'll chat. And we'll let you know exactly what the law is, because the people decide what the law is. That's the key to this whole thing. Right. And we're standing on the Bill of Rights.
Absolutely.
So it's that simple. And the prosecutor is the same way. We call him down at some point, maybe not too quickly, but reasonably quick. And we let him know, hey, look, that little puppet jury you're using over there when you do a trial, can't do that no more. That's repugnant. It's a wrongdoing, and we can't tolerate it. We just want to let you know that's breaking the law. You may not have realized that, but now you know it. If you use it again, we're going to call you down to the carpet, and we're probably going to indict you. So please don't use that jury no more. And by the way, when you need a grand jury, don't go running to those other guys over there, because that's repugnant to the Constitution. That's a puppet grand jury that you control. You see, you don't control us. You come to us, we control. Well, we'll be nicer than that, but we're not going to tell him we control him. But, you got to come to us. We're the people. We're going to decide on whether this case should go to court or not, whether it should be indicted or not. And as time goes on, he'll start to realize, well, I can't be having these people that are arrested for guns come in, because the grand jury turns that around and they call me down onto the carpet and say, what are you doing violating this guy's constitutional right? And we're going to call the cop in, too, and say, what are you doing violating this person's constitutional right? Let me tell you, a couple of cases is all it's going to take to move through New York for that's going to be the conversation throughout the police stations, throughout the whole state of New York at some point, when you pull a few of these guys in and start interrogating them, instead of them interrogating you, wondering why you're violating people's rights. They have a right. Haven't you read the Second Amendment? Look at that. It says, shall not infringe. I don't see nothing else. Well, they have to have, where do you see permit? Well, they have to have where do you see license? You see? It's that simple.
Right. Yeah, and that's absolutely beautiful. John,
but the people got to step up. There's not much time. Let me tell you, when they see us coming and they realize they're coming, they're going to move quicker. They're ready to pull the plug now. We have to do this now. We have weeks. We do not have months. We certainly do not have years. If you're hearing this message, go out to nationallibertyalliance.org, front page, watch the video, Power of the Grand Jury, up on the top left side, become a jurist. and then you'll get all the instructions. As soon as you click on that, you'll go to, and you fill out the registration form, you will go to a landing page, and that's your marching orders. That's your instructions. That'll tell you everything you need to know, everything you need to do, and it is your duty to do it. Woe is us if we don't step up and save this great country for our children. We are heading for Nazism or Marxism, and they're synonymous anyway. But we're heading for Marxism or Nazism, and I want to tell you, it's not a pretty sight. And a lot of people are not stepping in because they're afraid. Well, if you think you're afraid now, get your head out of the sand, because they're going to be marching down your street one day, pulling people out of the house, and it may very well be you. And they're going to put a bullet in your head, or they'll march you up to some concentration camp. Do not think that that's not going to happen, because it is exactly what their plan is. Now, those who don't agree with that or understand that, is because they're still sleeping. But I have a feeling all of your listeners know that, and they just have to get past the point of fear. Just do it, because we have the opportunity to prevent all this craziness that happened in Nazi Germany, from preventing it from happening on our soil, and it's your duty, and you can stop it. When they came for the Jews, they did nothing. Well, when they come for the patriots, you better do something, and you better do it now before they even come, because we can cut them off at the pass. And there's a lot of plans here. Once you get the sheriff on board, and he understands who you are and what's going on, and you give him a little bit of understanding now it's your job now to protect the people, okay? And this county is your responsibility. Martial law is repugnant to the Constitution. We'll show him where that says that, too. Martial law is against the Constitution. You can't allow that. If there's an emergency, you take control. You throw anybody else out of here that tries to come in and take control. And if you need some people on the borders, you call your deputies. And if you need more people, you call the grand jury. We have a great network. We'll get all kinds of people with guns and to follow your orders, to do whatever has to be done to protect this county. And when it comes to an emergency, food and all the resources of the county need to remain in that county to feed and care for the people of that county. Then the overflow that comes of the surplus will flow into the counties throughout New York. And then when it flows through New York, it then can flow into the other states. And all states and counties should be doing the same thing, and we'll be okay.
Absolutely. And by the way, that sheriff that's keeping those agents out of town, that applies to the banks too.
That's right.
So we're going to take a quick little water break here, John, and we'll be right back.
Right.
Do you need an experienced editor to look over your short story, script, or novel? Do you need help building a platform or self-publishing your book? Are you on the cusp of realizing your dream, but you need someone to help you with those few extra steps? Are you a business in need of an established copy editor or copywriter? Dan O'Brien has more than a decade of experience in writing and publishing, and his rates are flexible. All that matters to Dan is the integrity of your artistic vision, and Dan can help you create the highest quality work possible. Please email Dan today at amalgamconsulting@gmail.com or visit his website, www.amalgamconsulting.com. That's AMALGAM consulting.com. Write Dan today. Start your dreams tomorrow. Do you have hopes, dreams, and goals, but don't know how to reach them? Do you wonder how you could do differently to achieve greater success at home or at work? Do you feel like something is holding you back from enjoying your life to the fullest? Are you fed up with status quo and ready for real and lasting life change? Are you wanting to start a business or expand an existing one? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you are ready for life coaching with Mr. Attitude. Mr. Attitude will stretch and grow you and take your life to a whole new level of success by equipping you with the tools to help you to accomplish more in less time, get and keep your priorities in line, gain greater happiness and joy, face your fears, plan for success, be more assertive and confident, overcome negative stress, deal with negative thinking, set goals you will achieve, and more. Mr. Attitude specializes in results producing. Life strategy coaching for the personal side of your life, small business coaching for those who want to start a small business or build a stronger small business, train the trainer coaching
See if you
for
could
those who
field
aspire to become
some
a
of these
motivational
questions, Rod. You hear me?
professional speaker. Call today and reserve your appointment with greater success. 605-450-1955. That's 605-450-1955. Or email Bob at MrAttitudespeaks.com. That's MrAttitudespeaks.com. Mr. Attitude is committed to your success. All right, we're back on the House of Hidalgo show. This is your host, Rick Hidalgo, and we're talking today with John from the Liberty. Oh, I had it right here in front of me.
Alliance.
National
Liberty Alliance.
Yeah, National Liberty Alliance. And
.org.
Yep, .org. And we've been talking about grand juries and becoming jurors. John, I wonder how many people are you talking here?
In what sense?
In the sense of you're trying to organize your particular county.
Right. Yeah, you need 4 to 6 people to get the elections going, and that will grow as you're going through the elections. When you go through the election, I know at our election we had quite a few people show up, and then we invited everyone, and everyone said that they would join, so they joined into the process because we need the people to step up and become the trial and grand jurors. And the key thing is people put in whatever they can afford to put in. Some people may be retired or semi-retired or whatever, and can put a lot of time in. They can put full time in. Some people can put part time in. Some people can put a day a month in or something, or whatever it is that they can put in. Some people maybe can only come in once a year. They get the phone call. They'll just be put on the phone call list, and they'll get the phone call, and they'll say, "Hey, look, we've got a case coming up. It's going to require 2 days or 3 days, and it's going to be the 3rd, the 4th, and the 6th, the 3rd, 4th, and the 7th." And the people, either they can do it or they can't. If they can't do it, say, I got too many things going on. Fine, we'll put you back. We'll recycle your name. We'll call you another time. Thanks. And you go to the next phone call. And then you get your jurors, and that's how you do it. You don't force people. Once we get into the system, we got mostly Liberty people moving in first, and they're kind of primed for what we're doing, and they're easy to teach, and they're teachable, and they're ready to learn anyway, because they want to know what's going on and how to stop the problems we have. And then we'll start working into the general public. We need to take control of our schools. The grand jury will require that the schools be given back to the people, because central location is Nazism. You can't have that. Or communism. You can't have that. The schools belong to the people. So if you're in a school district and there's 1,000 families that have children going to a particular school, well, they get to decide what the curriculum is. So they have their meetings to make the decisions. The parents come in and they make because they're the boss. Not the school board. They're the board. The parents are the boss,
right? Not
the school board or anyone else. And so they come in, they decide the curriculum. So, like Jefferson said, let's say you got 1,000 families. Okay, and 20 families show up and they hammer out what the curriculum should be. Maybe they want to use the Bible as for the younger grades to learn to read, and the older grades too. Maybe they want to focus a lot more time on morality. Of course, you got the Constitution. You want to focus in the political process, the judicial process, and the committeeman process, and all these different things you want to teach your children. When a child comes out of 8th grade, now let me repeat that. When a child comes out of 8th grade, they should be able to go into a courtroom and handle a court case. Okay, they should be able to do that.
Yes.
Okay, 8th grade, because 8th grade is all you need. If you've seen the 8th grade test floating around out there from 1895, I think it is, I haven't met anyone who could pass that yet. Okay, and so they really understood things way back in the 1800s, a lot more than we did. Their education was much higher. We also send our children to school too early when they should be home. They have, early start or whatever they call pre-start, and then they have pre-start and all that stuff. But at 4 years old, your kid's going to school. No, that child needs to be home with mama, okay? Yes. And that child shouldn't be going to school maybe till, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years old. That's when they should be going to school. And for eight grades, maybe 6 or 7, but eight grades, and they should get it all. And right now, they just teach them how to be good slaves, and that's the problem. So you have the 20 families that come in. They make the decisions for the 1,000. Well, Jefferson said it, and you have the same thing with the grand jury going on right now, and you have the same thing with politics and the people who control our country. We don't have government by the majority. We have government by the majority who participate. So if those 20 families participate, guess who makes the decision on what your children are going to learn? And if you don't like it, then maybe you'll go to the next meeting, and maybe you'll put your voice up and convince people that your way is better. So if you have a Jewish community, they might want to have a Jewish focus in their school. That's their business, okay? And if you don't like it, move to the Christian community or an atheist community or something, whatever it is. You'll find a community that works for you, because people are free to do what they want. And that's freedom, that's liberty, that's what we have, and that's what we should have. That's what we're heading for.
Oh, absolutely. Amen. Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution guarantees every state of the Union a Republican form of government. And I don't see any measures on that saying that it has to be a national. I think that applies to every layer of government, all the way down to the local level.
Absolutely. Well, a Republican form of government, we have a constitutional republic, and the Constitution is the key. We have the Bill of Rights, or the Bill of Prohibitions, and that is the key to this whole thing. I get to decide everything. When you go into the court, in a court of record, if you're the plaintiff, you come into the court. If anybody wants to know what your rights are, anybody has any questions, all they have to do is ask me, and I'll let them know, because my rights are what I say they are. As long as my rights do not violate your rights, my rights are my rights. And if I have a right to carry a gun, I want to carry a gun, I'm going to carry a gun. If I want a common law grand jury, I'm going to have a common law grand jury, because I'm going to, by the way, that's the Fifth Amendment, is where the common law grand jury comes from. I made wanted to mention that. So, you live the life the way you want to live. You make the decisions. You participate in what's going on for the decision making that affects your life, and you'll be fine. But if you sit at home and you don't do anything, then you're going to have an education that someone else decided for you, which will probably be a lot better anyway for your children, because you have people who are concerned. Those concerned people, they really want a proper education for their children. They want the best. That's why they're going there, and they realize they need to do something about it, so they're going to do it. And that's what we have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does your, what's his name, Gerard? Does he have something to say? Yeah.
Yeah, along the same lines. I mean, we have a lot of cleaning up to do, and it's going to take a while. There's so much stuff out there that's just not so. Like in New York State, they say that the school is the primary educator of the child, and it always used to be the parent. Now that's a real backward statement. And I mean that's the law. That's why they're able to take your kids away. And the other thing is they've stopped teaching what they call civics in school. Now, civics is the study of your relationship to your government. Well, you see, they don't want you to know that. They're teaching the kids to be slaves in school. To be good little slaves. Outcome-based education. And they want them to be little IBM computer cards. You push it in, and you put A and B in, and you get C out. So we got a lot of undoing. And along those lines, liberty and takes maturity. A lot of people aren't comfortable making their own decisions. And so, and John has already mentioned, about, we have a government by the majority that participate. And there's another saying that says, those that refuse to participate in politics will be ruled by their inferiors who do. And that's what's going on. We don't need a majority of people to straighten this country out. We just need a tireless minority that lights the brush fires in people's minds. And that's what our job is. And that's what this grand jury is going to do. And you're going to find out that the other 98% of the people will just fall in line with it, because they're as long as they're comfortable, they'll go along with it. The thing that has made the time right for us now, and the reason that we're getting this big influx of interest, is so many people have been personally burned by this system. This system, when people would accept a lot of stuff, Americans are very, very patient. We put up with a lot of baloney, and as long as we can make our money and we can do what we want to do, we kind of go along to get along. But now you hear these horror stories. Everybody has somebody in their family or an extended family that have been burnt by this system, and it's getting worse and worse every day. And the ones that run the system are becoming more and more arrogant. And so finally, people have lifted their heads up and pulled that plug out of the back of their neck like in the Matrix, and they understand that this whole fantasy that they've built and fed to us was nothing more than a fantasy. You know? And that's where we're at. It's time to wake up and see the matrix that they have created, that have put us to sleep. I mean, there's a lot of undoing to do, but just be aware. You know, most of the people, when you come out with authority and you get justice, and I think when people understand that they can make a difference in this grand jury and jury system, I think they'll be fighting to sit on the seat. You see, right now, you know, it's always the same old story. It's really depressing, really discouraging, you know, and everything is just kind of like getting worse and worse, and we roll along. And even the police officers that are out there, you know, we have a representative government, and the guys on top have no idea where the rubber meets the road. They don't care. They don't have their fingers on the pulse beat of the people, and that's their demise because, you know, they make an illegal law like this gun law, and they expect these police to enforce it. Well, the police that are enforcing it are the ones that are going to bear the brunt first, because just like in Nuremberg, these guys can't turn around and say, well, I was obeying orders, because that's what they said in Nuremberg, and guess what? They hung them. You're not allowed to just obey orders. And this whole thing in New York State with this horrible, egregious gun act, they go, we got to repeal it. We got to repeal it. No, we don't have to repeal it because it's unconstitutional. And an unconstitutional law is as if it never existed. If you go out there and go repeal, what you're doing is you're giving the law credibility. It is no law. It's unconstitutional. I don't need a lawyer to tell me when something's unconstitutional. You know, do you need somebody to tell you, yep, it's murder? You know what I mean? It's just about that clear, and it should be. And if it's not, it's because you've drinking too much of the Kool-Aid, you know, as far as I'm concerned.
It'll be repealed when the people ignore it.
Well, they got rid of prohibition the same way. One of the ways they got rid of prohibition is the grand juries refused to convict. They didn't give a crap if the guy they caught him red-handed, they had pictures, they had the still, they had everything, they had witnesses, and the jury goes, not guilty. That's ruling on the law. That means that we don't like this law, you're misapplying it, you've overstepped your bounds. And that's what we need to do with all these laws. We need to negate them through jury nullification. And one of the first steps is getting a good grand jury that won't even indict them in the first place. And then, you know, you nip it in the butt right there, you know, with the indictment.
Yep.
And the time is now for this. I mean, look at everything. I mean, haven't we had enough? You know, it used to be a monopoly game, and we land on the community chest. You land on a community chest, you got to pay $200, go to jail, and don't collect $200. And so as long as we kept buying our little apartment houses, we were happy. Well, you know, we're ending up in jail too many times, and our apartment houses are being foreclosed, and the whole game has gone to the dogs now. You know, and that's why the time is right now. But you know, it's very late because they're ready to close this iron fist, and many people are oblivious to it. And you know, like I said, it's only going to take a minority waking up to move the system in the right direction. Listen, the last revolution, there was only about 2% of the people that participated in that. You know, and you had another couple of percent that were on England's side, and the rest of the people, they went along with whatever was going on. You know what I mean? Their head was in the sand, and they just wanted to eat and do what they had to do, and they kind of went along with it. And I think it's even worse today. You know, so it's up to us to keep that movement going, to keep the cause going, and to educate. You know, and thank God we have computers. And that's another thing that we have to make sure that we protect, because today, nobody buys encyclopedias. Who buys Encyclopedia Britannica? First of all, you can't afford it. So you get online and you go in, and who even buys Bibles anymore? So the Bible's online. So now you got your information, you got your religion, you got so many things in this computer system. It should be sacrosanct. They should have their hands off of it, and the only thing that should happen is it should be protected under the Constitution, under the Ten Commandments, That's what should run the internet. They should not have any kind of control as far as that goes. You know, our First Amendment, the newspapers, they enjoy a certain benefit, and they're abusing that now because they're not reporting the news like they should be, and they're talking about having a switch on the internet. Can you imagine that? Well, why don't you just say put a switch on the newspapers and we'll shut them off when we don't want you to know what's going on? Because it's the same thing. It's actually worse. I mean, I'm on this stupid computer. I don't say stupid, but you know, for me, it's stupid because I didn't grow up with it, and now I've gotten into it, and it's my total source. I don't even watch the nightly news. I don't watch network television almost at all. I don't care. I don't want to hear it. You know, most of what they say is bias, or all of it just about. You know, and you get people, you know, they say,
oh, the moral stuff. I always cringe when I sit down and watch something with my children.
Well,
they always come up with something horrible, and I don't want my children's ears to hear these things.
Well, they're pushing an immoral agenda.
Yeah.
They're brainwashing the people because even to sit and watch television in the first place, they've proven it. It puts you in a state of mind. I forget what it is. You know, you got alpha, beta, brainwaves. And what they've shown is that when you watch television, you're in a trance, and you're into a suggestive trance. And so the information that you get from television gets downloaded into your brain in images. And what they've discovered is that later on, when you go to recall that information, the brain doesn't have the ability to filter out what information it got as images from the television or images from you actually experiencing something. So they'll give you a piece of a subject, exactly what they want you to know about it, and people walk around thinking they know everything about the subject because they were downloaded one night in their living room.
Yeah.
And what you know is what the network people told you.
Yeah, that's why people still go to McDonald's even though they know it's all crap.
Yeah,
Well,
we're little Robotrons.
What people need to understand, and if they understood this, it could change their life profoundly. They really have to sit and think about this and meditate this. We have a heritage, and we have to ask ourselves, what is that heritage? And if you read our founding documents, you'll come to appreciate the heritage. The heritage that we have is common law. If we're ignorant to common law, then we've lost our heritage, okay? And the inheritance we receive from that heritage is liberty. And without that heritage, we cannot have the inheritance. People need to understand that principle. You know, people have to do is they have to find peace with their maker. They have to go to their private prayer closets, and they need to work it out with the governor of the universe. That's what they have to do. I can't tell them what to do and how to believe in God, but they have to work that out themselves. And if we don't all work that out as we come into a court situation, a justice situation, where we're deciding people's lives, and we're unable to understand what justice is. You know, the word justice in the Black's Law Dictionary, fourth edition, and probably all the editions, the word justice is synonymous with virtue. Okay, it's synonymous with virtue, and virtue stems from God. It comes from the Bible. You know, what was it? Benjamin Franklin said, "Only a virtuous people are capable of freedom." Why?
Right.
Because you can't tell someone that they can't put a needle in their arm. But only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. A nation becomes more corrupt and vicious. They have more need of masters. Okay, now that's a quote from Benjamin Franklin, who everybody says was immoral, and of course he wasn't. He was not immoral. He confessed that he was a big sinner when he was younger, but he repented, and he didn't live that kind of an immoral life when he got wisdom and he grew older. And like many of us, we all are kind of wild when we're kids, and we figure it out a little later, if we were raised up in a proper way. But what we have to realize is that this justice is justice is identified with virtue, and we have to come to terms. You know, you mention the name of Jesus sometimes, or just God, and people melt. They got to get over that, because if they don't, hey, we talk with Muslims. There are a lot of Muslims involved with us, especially down in the city, and they're dead serious on our Constitution. And they're very godly people. I found them to be very warm people. I have no idea what the news is talking about, saying that all these Muslims are this or that or the other thing.
That's right.
Yeah, there's a couple of wackos, just like there's. We got the KKK, and they claim Christ.
Yeah.
So we got the same problem in any religion you go to. You got wackos. Forget that. These are people. They as a matter of fact, the Muslims, they accept Christ as a prophet. And the Jews, they accept Christ for his word's sake as far as his teachings. You know, they may not believe in him the way a Christian might believe. There's no reason why we can't get along and work out our relationship with God as we understand it to the best of our ability and go to our own prayer closets. You know, there is a verse in 1 Chronicles 28, verse 20, Muslim, Jew, and Gentile and Christian, they all will accept this because it's the Old Testament. And it tells us, be strong and of good courage, and do it. And that's what we need to do today. We have to become strong and get courage and just do it. Just do it. Fear not, nor be dismayed, for the Lord God, even my God, will be with thee. He will not fail thee, nor forsake thee, until you have finished all the work for the service of the house of the Lord. Now, that's 1 Chronicles 28:20. And ultimately, that's our orders today. We have to do the right thing. We have to be strong. We have to have courage, and we have to fear not and do it and not be dismayed, and we have to trust in God. Because if we're trusting in God and we know whether we're doing that or not, just go to your prayer closet and work it out. And you're trusting in God, and you're coming into this court situation, this judicial process, with a sense of justice. You're going to search out justice to the best of your ability. You're going to search out a sense of honor with the best of your ability. And you're going to be merciful when it's necessary. So you're going to work it out logically and with the heart, the mind and the heart together, and you're working with a group of other people, and you try to really figure out what's going on, and you want to be able to go to sleep tonight once you figure out your decision. And that's what you have to do. And if you think you're going to have a hard time going to sleep that night because you're kind of leaning toward a decision that you're uncomfortable with, then maybe you got to go the other way, okay? You got to give the benefit of the doubt because there's some kind of a doubt inside you. And you just got to work it out. We're all capable of doing it. Let's just do it. And if we don't do it, I'm going to tell you right now, we're going to be cursed if we don't do the job that's before us right now. People now know what they have to do. They have to stand up and do it. And if they don't do it, woe is them, and woe is us, and woe are your children. Our posterity is lost forever. We have freedom because our founders' fathers were concerned with their posterity. We are their posterity.
That's right.
We better be concerned about our posterity. We have to pass it on. So we have to do it. Let's do it. Get out to nationallibertyalliance.org. Watch the video. Go up to the left side. Click. Become a leader. Get common law grand juries in your counties, whatever state you are. Get involved, get connected, come to our Monday night meetings, and become involved. Let's save this republic, and let's do it now. The time is over. There is no more time.
You know, when I hear you talk, John, the verse comes to mind: "Work out your salvation with fear and trembling."
Amen.
And then also, if I were going to surmise everything that you said in this nearly an hour and a half now, I would go to the Declaration of Independence where it says, governments are instituted among men deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Amen. Key verse right there.
And if we really want, I've been brainstorming for a long time. What's the most effective way for us to remove our consent from this behemoth de facto government, and really. This is the way to do it, isn't it? This grand jury.
Right, because you see, when a grand jury, this is what people have to realize. It is, and the government still understands what I'm going to tell you, because that's why they have puppet grand juries and puppet juries, because they still understand this. They can't indict anyone. They can't hold anyone in jail. They can't have someone convicted of a crime, what they think is a crime, without the consent of the people. So they created this puppet system. We're gonna pull the curtain back, and you're gonna see the wizard, and we're gonna get rid of that puppet, and we're gonna place it back with the people. And you know what? When they bring their quote unquote crimes to us to prosecute, and we look at that, and if we don't agree it's a crime, all we do is just ignore it. If we don't give them consent, they can do nothing. And that's why when they arrest somebody, anybody, okay, and they're not brought before the grand jury and they're holding them in jail, we want them. When we find out we're in power, we want those people in front of us within 24 hours. We want to see them on the carpet. We want to see their accusers, and we'll decide whether you can hold them or not, because that's a violation. That's kidnapping if you don't have a right to hold them. It's kidnapping, and you guys are going to go to jail. The cops that arrested them, they're going to go to jail. And the people who put the order out, they're going to go to jail. The prosecutors that started this whole they're all going to go to jail. Because enough is enough.
So the quickest way to remove this system is to remove your participation in it. But you cannot remove your participation if that's a crime. So the way that you can remove your participation is by instituting these grand juries that will uphold your decision not to participate in their Nizzy Prius court, not to participate in the fiction that they have drawn up, that have sucked us into. You see, because they still respect the grand jury and they understand what the grand jury is. It's written in there. And until the day that they nullify the Constitution is the day that we have to fight for this, because that piece of paper, which George Bush says is just a GD piece of paper, in a certain sense, he's right. It's just a GD piece of paper until I pick it up in one hand and hold a gun in the other and say, listen, you're going to obey this or else. I'm going to shoot you based on you violating these words that we instituted you by, right? So that's what it's about. And when you pull your participation, this system, it's self-policing. People participate with it, so it goes on and on and on and on. When people understand and discover that they don't have to participate, and when they have a grand jury that will uphold their rights not to participate, it's going to be like pulling the curtain back and pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This thing's going to fall like a house of cards, because that's what it is. It took them many years to build this house of cards, but that bottom one's going to come down and it's going to fall in a flash.
With a pebble.
And I seriously believe that. Yeah. I mean, here, look at the emperor has no clothes. Everybody's worshiping, oh, what a beautiful suit he has. And it takes a little boy to come out and go, he's naked. And he's fat and ugly, too. All of a sudden, people's eyes are open. It's basically the same thing we have today. They think that all this stuff is legitimate, and they've brainwashed us into believing that we need a beating once a month or something. You know what I mean? It's like that's what's going on here. I mean, you can take somebody and ruin them and ruin their senses if you torture them enough. I mean, I've heard stories of soldiers that came home from Vietnam that used to go to these places to get strung up and have their bones popped out of the joints because that's what the Vietnamese did to them every day. And what happened is they had it so much that when they came back, they missed it. They missed their torture. And that's if we're getting to the place in this country where that happens, forget about it. Because people, believe it or not, in a sick sort of a way, are used to the torture, And like I said, it takes maturity to have liberty, It takes responsibility, I mean, if there's no speed limit sign, does that mean you're going to go down a crowded street and do 90 miles an hour? Does it take a brain surgeon to figure that out? No.
Just self-governing, that's right.
That's right. And everybody knows when they're doing wrong. And the thing is so if you're out on the open highway and you got a car and you did 100 miles an hour and you didn't endanger anybody, the king has a Maserati. Who's going to pull him over and tell him he can't speed? Well, I'll tell you who, is if he runs through a crowded street with a bunch of women and children and people and he puts their lives in danger, then the people are going to pull him over and say you can't do that. You see, that's the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
So if there's no injured party, there is no crime. And if we could just get that into people's heads and stop trying to legislate free will, and just think of the money we would save. They got everybody all up in arms in this billion-dollar anti-drug war. And let me tell you what, if for some reason they decided to get rid of the anti-drug war, going along with George Orwell's 1984, and that they would need another boogeyman up there in place of it. Because that's all this is about. They need somebody to blame the giving up of your rights on. Oh, we got to give up some rights because we can't allow this terrible thing to happen. Let me tell you something. At the turn of the century, when you went down to the pharmacy, if you wanted to buy a bag of cocaine, it was in there, and then you could buy 15 pounds of it, and it had a skull and crossbones. And if you went down the street and stuck your head in there, yeah, people would kind of step over you, and maybe one of the nuns in the churches or something would eventually pick you up and put you in their thing and sober you up if you didn't die. But there was no government offices telling you not to do that and that it was against the law and this and that. Now, it's different if it's a child because, listen, we don't let children drink either, do we? But as an adult, you have the right to make these decisions. And based on that, That's what this is about. We need to step up to the plate and get back to our roots. And I'll stop there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I'd like to end with a Bible verse.
Yeah, go
the
for
Old
it.
Testament. I'm not sure exactly where this is found, but I remember it. If my people who are called by my name shall humble themselves and pray, and I will heal their land and forgive their sins. Now, that's a kind of a, that's not an exact quote, but generally that is the key. We need our land healed. And so we have to repent, we have to turn to God, and we have to rest in His Word. And by the way, common law, again, comes from the Bible. That's where history shows us it comes from. So it's God's law, it's natural law. That's why it's inalienable.
That's exactly right. Hey, I just want to thank you guys for coming on today. We're down about 30 seconds to go here, and you guys have been fantastic. I will be passing this on, and I'll even send you guys the link to this so you guys can, put it wherever you want to.
Yeah, we'll download it and stick it on our page. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. And let me ask you a question. Would you guys, if I got permission to bring you guys on to a call sometime, would you guys want to come on? We're gonna
anytime.
Okay, all right.
We're not ready for the mainstream media yet. That'll happen after we take power.
Right. But we'll come do this anywhere, anytime.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking Glenn Beck at this point. I mean,
Yeah, no.
Right.
Yeah,
God bless everybody.
Yeah, God bless everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was John Darash from the National Liberty Alliance.org. It was a very good call. I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast. I thank you all for coming. I just want to say God bless everyone. This has been another episode of the House of Hidalgo Show, the Estate Radio Network. We appreciate you coming by. God bless all. Good night. Hey, remember, stay safe.